Hello and welcome to another episode of Sharing Wisdom. I'm your host, Angie Wisdom, and today, don't exit this podcast yet, but we're talking about divorce, breakup, and heartbreak. I know, not the most cheery conversation that you can, tune into, but it's important. We're all going to go through heartbreak at one point in time in our life, and 56% of people are going to go through divorce who are married. So it's an important conversation on how to actually navigate it. And I've got Sara Davison here. She's from the UK, so you're going to love her voice and her accent anyways, but she's going to bring us a wealth of knowledge around how to navigate this. She has, credentialed over 600 coaches in 28 different countries who help people get through the divorce process and reclaim their life. So it's a great conversation no matter whether this affects you today or you know somebody else in your life. Let's get into it. Well, Sara, we have to just jump in here because my mind is full of questions for you. I mean, I've been in the coaching industry for a long time, and I know there are divorce coaches and breakup coaches out there, but you seem to have really taken up a massive share in the marketplace for this. And I want to talk about all of that from a coaching perspective, but I really want to start in with how did this become a thing for you? You know, what was your journey to bring you to a place where you're like, I'm going to be a divorce coach?
Oh, well, thanks for having me on, Angie. I'm really pleased to be here. Um, I think it's not really a job title that anyone dreams of at school. So it definitely didn't come from my careers advisor. I love coaching, and like you, I've been in coaching forever. So for me, it was a natural sort of thing to go into. It was only when I was 15 years into being a coach when my divorce happened completely out of the blue. I didn't see it coming. We've been married only 3 years. Our son was one, and we had a global business together. I had an office in London, office in Sydney, Australia. You can probably tell from my accent I'm British, so I live in London now. But and I thought we'd created this incredible lifestyle. I did know there were problems. I mean, there were warning signs, and hindsight is a wonderful thing. But I wouldn't change anything. But ultimately, one night I found out that my husband not only didn't want to be married to me anymore, but that he was madly in love with somebody else. And that somebody else happened to be 12 years younger than me, which was just ouch. Very
Yeah.
beautiful, which was also not helpful, really, for me anyway. And then I found out she was pregnant a couple of months later, and our son was only one. So at that point, we worked together, obviously lived together. Suddenly, my whole world changed. And I did a lot of the ugly crying on the bathroom floor and a lot of calling my mom at 2 a.m. saying, help, I don't know what I'm doing. Um, and then I really had a bit of a pivotal moment. I'd gone out to Sydney, and I don't know if you or anyone listening has ever experienced this, but when someone's cheated on you and you find out, then all of a sudden, well meaning people, but people will come forward and share how they found out before you ever knew that they were having an affair.
Mm.
And that is
Oh,
like a dagger through the heart every time. And I was in
right.
Australia, and someone had come up to me and said, oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry to hear what you've been dealing with. I found out X number of months ago, and she was going into the details. I just had to get out the office, and I went for a walk down Balmoral Beach, which is a beautiful white sand, blue turquoise sea. And I was sat there bawling my eyes out, crying and crying, thinking, I can't take this pain anymore. It's too much. And then I kind of had a pivotal moment where I was like, you know what? I am done with the crying. I am done with the pain. How do I turn this around? And I'd looked for help, and I hadn't found anything specific to help me with all the different nuances of my breakup and the cheating and the we worked together and the divorce process that I'd been thrown into, which was incredibly aggressive. And I thought, you know what? I've got 15 years of coaching tools. I'm going to combine those with my experience and find a way through for me and my son. But actually, I'm going to create something that can help other people so nobody has to feel the way I feel. And that's when my motto, screw you, watch this, was born. And that's where I took my power back, really, on that beach. And I've always looked back at that moment very fondly, because it was the day I decided to step up and to take my power back and to do something about it. And so it started
Wow.
then, and that's really where it's grown from there ever since.
I love your mantra, your motto there. I think it comes off much better with your accent
Oh,
though.
do you?
It sounds way better when you say it than if I say, screw you, watch this. Yeah, you need the accent for it for sure.
That's
I can't
funny.
help but think that pivotal moment for you, I'm wondering, you tell me, is if because you've had all that coaching, you are a coach, you've gone through so much before that particular incident. Do you feel that was really the foundation that even gave you the power to see the other side and to go, enough of the pain, enough of, the crying, and I'm turning this around?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I do think if you're a coach, you know that things don't always have to be the way they are in this moment, that you can always
Yeah.
change it. And I had been looking for help, but I hadn't found anything. There were some, like one of my dear friends, Paul McKenna, has written lots of books. One of them was How to Mend a Broken Heart. And that was helpful, obviously, because he's a genius and I love him to pieces. And my situation had so many little things that I was dealing with, that there wasn't anything about how to cope when your husband's having a baby with someone who you have to see every day. And then he moved her into the penthouse in the apartment development we were living in. So I was then living near them and working with them. It was very, very difficult. So that's the bit that I thought I need to create some specific tools. I need to get really technical here and like look at all the different parts. So yes, you're right. It's because I had that mindset of let's find a way. But when I couldn't find it, I was like, I'm not living with this. You got to be kidding me. This is not going to define me for the rest of my life. Like I'm going to do something about it. So that's when I actually wrote my first book, Uncoupling, and that became a bestseller overnight, which kind of showed me that there was a need and people did want the tools. So I started coaching one-to-one clients, but actually I found that there was too many people for me to help. So that's when I set up my training school, and we've now trained over, gosh, it's well over 650 coaches. So people to become breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse coaches across 28 different countries now, which is really my mission, was to get these tools out to as many people.
Yeah, remarkable. And, I can't help but also wonder, like, it goes to show you how many people were out there wanting this support, wanting this help, but how few people actually probably speak up about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just think it's weird, though. Don't you think, Angie? It's weird. Like, if you want to stop smoking, there's a million groups you can join. If you want to lose
Sure.
weight or you want to stop drinking, there's support and groups and help and books for everything. But one thing that pretty much every single human being will go through is heartbreak. And yet there was no support group, there was no one-to-one coaching, there was no support for what I was doing and what I needed. And that's what was driving me kind of crazy. I was like, what? The other stuff is great for the people that need it, but everybody deals with heartbreak. And it's not something you should just get on with. It's not something that is just going to go away. And people say time is a good healer. And yes, because it dulls the pain and dulls the memories, but if you're not processing it, you're not getting rid of that, you're not dealing head on with any trauma, you're just trying to put it out of your mind. So yeah, I thought it was crazy. So now we have all those things, online groups and one-to-one and books and podcasts and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Well, you had you're smart. So you had obviously looked in the right places. You had read some books. You even mentioned your friend had written a book on how to mend a broken heart. But what were you not finding in your search that you now offer?
Well, that's such a great question. So there was therapy, and I tried therapy, and I also tried counseling. So I went to a therapist who, I mean, I love her to bits, and I do refer clients to her because she's very talented. What she helped me with was understanding personality disorders. And then I went to a counselor, and the counselors have talked about how did I feel. I felt terrible. So talking about how terrible I felt in every session wasn't helping me. It was kind of like sort of sitting in that sort of dirty bathwater and not going anywhere, right? So I was like, I need to do something different. I need tools. And as a coach, we can be much more directive and solutions focused, results focused. And I have developed specific tools for everything from how to dial down heartbreak, how to deal with your partner running off with one of your best friends, to how to deal with the dent that when you take your wedding ring off is left on your finger, things that nobody tells you. But I'm there going, well, I've taken my wedding ring off now, so I don't think about it all the time. But now I've got this huge dent and it's not going. And nobody tells you that happens. And yet you have to live with it. So I've come up with tools and techniques and practical tips for all those different areas, and going through the divorce process, even from how to choose the best legal team to, how to pick the best friends to support you. Because a lot of friends actually make things worse, not because they're trying to be difficult, but because they're emotionally invested and they hate them and they're angry with them, and they were betrayed on some level as well because they welcome this person maybe into their life, and then we work with people who are, things have fizzled out and they're just, the kids have left maybe, and now they're like, well, I still really care about you, but I don't think I want to stare across the breakfast table at you for the rest of my life now. So how do we work this through in an amicable way? And then obviously my specialist area is how to cope with a toxic relationship breakdown, because that's very different. When you're divorcing a healthy partner, there is always going to be conflict and you're always going to have disagreements, usually over things like the piano or who gets the dog or whatever. But there is compromise. You both want some kind of compromise to walk away and say, well, yeah, I kind of lost on that and won on this. It's fair enough. When you're divorcing an unhealthy partner, a toxic, abusive, narcissistic personality, there is no such word as compromise in the divorce. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of people will say that, well, you're not living with them anymore, so it will be fine, it will get better. But actually, post-separation abuse is one of the biggest misunderstood issues that we have around the world, because when you separate from an abuser, the actual ways that they can control you, and they'll still want to control you. In fact, as you step away, they want to increase their control to get you back. That goes through the divorce process. So it's all about total annihilation and causing maximum suffering, which is a massive issue for, if you're going through a divorce process, you're reeling maybe from heartbreak, but then the control through the finances and the children and the gaslighting and the lying still continues, but just through the divorce process. So again, that's our specialist topic as well. I've trained a lot of coaches in domestic abuse and how to help people recovering from those relationships and going through that process, because a lot of people believe it will break you. And if you've been in an abusive relationship, then you're kind of scarred. And to be fair, there are, physical sometimes, or there will be emotional scars, but they do not have to define you. And that's where my tools that are very specific to getting through that, how to deal safely with an abuser. I'm also the patron of a domestic abuse charity, so this is something I take, it's very close to my heart. They're an amazing charity called the Dash Charity, and they support a lot of people, and they come in and give talks to my coaches when we train them. They also accredit some of my courses and my trainings to make sure that it is from a UK regulated charity, so you're getting the best advice, the right information, because there's a lot of toxic information, misinformation on the internet. If you type in the word narcissist, you kind of get into a bit of a rabbit warren of things that aren't really true, or people are banding it around like a buzzword. And what we want to do is make sure you have the facts, you understand what you're dealing with, and you have specific tools to help safeguard you and your family as best we can and help you navigate that.
I imagine as you say some of that, like this, what was your exact word? That kind of post-divorce trauma, right?
Post-separation divorce, post-separation abuse, yeah.
Post-separation abuse, yes. So I imagine like that, and even when you get a taste of it, that probably sends some people into a place of going, forget it. Like, it's just too hard. I'm better off staying than I am leaving.
You're spot on. That's exactly what it's designed to do. So a lot of abusers, well, this is what they do. They want to cause maximum pain so they get what they want ultimately. So they want you to say, take the money, take the house. Okay, see the kids as much as you want, and I'll sacrifice my time so you can have time. There's so many ways they can almost manipulate and abuse the system, because the family court system is not fit for abusers, but they can manipulate the system very well, and that's the problem that we have. And it's a global problem. UK, US, Australia, I've interviewed so many experts, and and people like me who campaign to change things, because we've seen the state of the family court system for victims of abuse. And in the UK, there was a survey done by an incredible woman called Natalie Page from the Court Said, and she campaigns as well a lot on these issues. Her research showed that over 80% of victims of abuse who were going through the family court system in the UK, when surveyed, reported that they were traumatized by the system itself. So what's happening is the system is becoming the abuser. The legal firms, the family court system become the mouthpiece of abuse because they're representing the abuser, and that's what's being heard. So now you're not just being abused by your abuser; they have a mouthpiece and a platform and court hearings, and that is extremely intimidating. Emotionally, it is devastating, and financially, it can be crippling because you have to have funds to go fight these cases. So again,
right.
It is a sledgehammer, and there's very little you can do. If you want to stay out of court, you want to do it amicably. If one party wants to push this and wants to cause pain and harm and as much upset as possible, then that's how it is enabled through the family court system in many cases. Now, that's not to say there aren't good people in the system. There are cases that work out well, but unfortunately, most of the time, the research and the studies show that it is extremely traumatizing for victims of abuse. And you don't have a lot of choice if your abuser is hell-bent on taking you through that process.
Right. So what do you think the biggest mistake is that people make when they're kind of starting down this journey and they're in a relationship that they don't want to be in anymore, and it does get hard, it gets difficult? What's the biggest mistake you see your clients initially making?
Yeah, I think we think that if you go to court, you're going to get justice. And unfortunately, it's not always the case. So what I think is we think, okay, let's go to court, we'll get a resolution. Actually, we've got to look at lots of different things here. The emotional cost is one big part that is overlooked. The financial cost is one thing, and that can be very expensive going through a family court situation. But I think we underestimate the emotional impact of going through those cases. So I always say to my clients, look, this is a question for you and we can work through it in our sessions, but let's have a think about, what do you want and what do you need? And when you go through a court system, there's no guarantee. And there's a lot of things you can't share or aren't going to get covered because of the time limit and the funding issues in the court system, which is very restrictive for them anyway. So bear in mind the emotional impact of going through it. Don't just think about the financial gains or potentially the cost of a lawyer to take you through it. Also think about the emotional roller coaster you will be on going through the system. Sometimes it's better to walk away with maybe a little less than you wanted, but your emotional sanity intact, than sort of fighting through, which can be years and years in the family courts to get something that you may or may not get. But again, that's a difficult decision for people to make, but I think it's something everyone should consider.
So it sounds like getting a lot of clarity, making sure you have all of those facts in front of you before you go making decisions. You speak a lot about the mental, effect that it has on you, on your mindset, on your emotional well-being, all of that. Can you share with us some of the tools, the tactics that you use with your clients for people who are starting down this journey and are going through either the breakup, the divorce that is so, emotionally challenging for them?
Yeah, and it is tough. Divorce, not a lot of people know this, but divorce is known as the second most traumatic experience we go through in life after death of a loved one. So it's right up there. And I certainly didn't realize that until I was sort of catapulted out of my marriage and I was realizing how painful it was. Then that's something that I've seen with so many clients, that it is so painful. So first of all, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset. In fact, we have to go through that process of grieving the end of the relationship to come out the other side. So know that it's okay to go through that. There's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling like this is going on or it's really upsetting you. That's okay. It's normal. Also, I would say first thing to do is get a breakup support team in place. Having people around you that are carefully chosen to be able to support you with the things that worry you the most. So how do you know what is worrying you the most? Because there'll be a lot of stuff going on in your head. Think about the things that keep you awake at night, or when you wake up that give you that sinking feeling. Those are the things that we want to make sure you have somebody on speed dial on your phone that can answer those questions for you. Because what we want to do is create a group of people around you who are specialists to help you fast track through this. So whether that's someone that can give you good financial advice, and you don't have to pay lots of money for this. It could be a friend that's good with spreadsheets that can look at your budget and take into account your outgoings and what you've got in your savings, if you've got any, all those sorts of things, and help you look at, actually, this is the gap you're going to have. And that's okay, because now we need to find a way to fill that. But clarity gives you power. A lot of people think that, actually, I don't want to know because I think it's going to be really bad. So I'm going to stick my head in the sand, and I'm not going to really focus on the money side. But actually, once you know what the gap is, or the difference in lifestyle you're going to have to get used to, then you can figure out how you fix that, how you either cut back on something maybe you're not using anymore or don't need so much, or maybe you look at how you can create another revenue stream or get a promotion or look at other things. So where you are right now is not where you're going to end up. Okay, whatever you get in the divorce settlement is not where you end up. But this is where we need to know right now, is to give you clarity, because that will give you power to make better informed decisions. So having someone to help you with the finances, maybe if there's legal questions, maybe getting out of the house is an issue. So finding an exercise buddy. The reason I say to do it with someone and find a buddy is because most people, given the choice, will stay in bed, pull the duvet over their head and just eat chips. So actually, in those moments, if you have someone ringing your bell saying, where are you? We're supposed to be at this yoga class, or you're supposed to be walking the dog with me, it will get you out of bed because you'll have accountability. Obviously, as you would say, Angie, you need a good coach by your side to help you through and deal with those emotional issues as well. And a friend. But as I said before, pick your friends carefully for this particular group, because you want someone who's not emotionally invested, someone who can actually give you constructive advice. Not as one of my clients on her first session, she turned up with her car full of bags with his clothes chopped up into small pieces that had happened on a night with a couple of bottles of wine with her best friend who'd come over.
Oh my goodness.
Who said, right, let's get cutting. And that backfired in quite a big way for her. So ultimately, choose your friends for the advice carefully. Obviously, you still have the other friends to get your connection with, but just make sure the ones you're going to for advice, make sure it's constructive.
You have to watch out for the people, and you got to love your friends for this. They're there to support you, but the ones that commiserate with you, and they will just throw more gasoline on the fire for you. And they think they're being your biggest cheerleader, but it's really almost just like creating a bigger hole and, negativity around the situation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very, very
you do have
wise.
to be careful. The other thing that I think is super important is self-care. A lot of people think self-care is selfish, but it isn't, because if you can't look after yourself, then you're not going to be in a good position to make some of the biggest decisions of your life. And it's kind of rubbish that when you're going through this roller coaster of the loss cycle with the denial and the anger and the depression and the feeling stuck and moving forward and 2 steps forward one day and then 5 steps back the next, which is all very normal. At that same time, you're having to make huge life-changing decisions about when you see your children and where you're going to live and what you're going to give to your partner and what you're going to keep. I mean, it's huge. So again, we've got to make sure we're looking after ourselves, just like putting the oxygen mask on the airplane. We've got to do it for ourselves first, even though it might feel like, I shouldn't really be doing this. Time out, even if it's just a nice hot bath, or hanging out with some friends that make you feel good about yourself, something that you have in your diary to look forward to, where you're getting that love and connection, or just time out to relax. Really important.
I hear so much support in everything you said. I'm writing some notes down, and it's like support around the things you worry about, support around, getting out and getting to the gym, support around so many different areas. I have not been through this process before, thank the Lord. But for someone who has, I imagine all the support you're saying you need, it feels like a lonely process.
Yeah. Isolation and loneliness actually society-wide is one of the biggest issues we're dealing with right now, as human beings on the planet, no matter where you live, or what you're dealing with. However, it is really a big issue for people going through breakups, because love and connection is the number one human need. So we all want that love and connection. And obviously you lose that with your intimate partner, they've gone. So we're craving that. But again, you don't need to find that from jumping into another relationship. You can find love and connection from friends and family, from a pet, you know. So again, there's other ways to find that, just to give yourself a bit of balance, a bit of a break before you do some of the work to heal yourself before you look for another partner. But yeah, I think that support is key. And that's why I set up the online support groups as well, because people from all over the world come onto those. They're on Zoom, they're an hour long, they're run by my accredited coaches. So it means you've got somewhere that's a safe space to go to share some of your story if you want to. You don't have to. You can just listen. If you've got questions, like, I don't get why I'm feeling like I still love them when, you know, they treated me so bad. I mean, that's a classic. Or when is the pain going to stop? You know, those kind of questions. That's what my accredited specialist coaches who run those groups, they've been working with me for years. There's 32 hours a month to choose from. You could go on, get the help, meet other people, find your tribe and get the support. And it's free for a week, and then it's less than $1 an hour afterwards. So it's literally the lifeline that a lot of people depend on. But the friendships and the positivity and the support and coaching tools will help you fast track. So as you said, support is key wherever you feel comfortable getting it. But if you don't have that, because some people are struggling with that, then obviously that's one of the reasons why I set up the group, so that anyone can access it.
Yeah, that being together in a group is huge, and people underestimate that. I mean, and you probably did this before you even did the divorce coaching. I know in my groups, it's one of the number one things that people say is, I finally feel like I'm not alone. I finally feel like somebody understands me. It's not just me. Because I think there's the tendency to believe that this is all about you and you're the only one who's dealing with this and the only one who's going through it, when the reality is, you know, we don't really create new problems in our world. Like we're all kind of recycling them. So people have gone through what you go through, and there's a huge amount of peace and comfort in knowing that, for sure.
Yeah. And you also get that sense of perspective as well. So you might think that your situation is the worst possible situation, and it may well feel like that. I'm not saying it isn't. But then when you speak to other people and you see, well, they're going through something similar or something that's even worse than what you could ever imagine going through, then it gives you that perspective. And sometimes that can be quite healing as well. So again, that group scenario, there's a lot of power to it, a lot of power, which is really healing.
There's got to be something. First, in my mind, I'm wondering, what are the statistics for divorce? I'm
Well,
sure you
currently,
know.
the global sort of statistic is 56% of first marriages end in divorce.
Wow, that's a
I
big
know during
number.
COVID, it spiked by about 20% after, well, when COVID
Wow.
came to an end, we had a huge spike to an all-time high. Then recently it's pulled back. These are UK stats, but they pulled back in the UK recently because we have this cost of living crisis. And interestingly, I was interviewed by a journalist for the Telegraph newspaper who said that the Office of National Statistics here had said, you know, there are less females filing for divorce at the moment. And his conclusion from that, the Office of National Statistics, his comment with his statistics was that must be because men are behaving better in marriages. And she phoned me to say, Sara, would you like to comment? I was like, yes, please. I don't think that's what it is. I do think right now we're in the middle of a very big cost of living crisis. It's very expensive to get divorced because not only the legal fees, but you're then looking at splitting two lifestyles, two mortgages, two cost of living, running two households. That's extremely expensive. The reason women may not be filing for divorce as much is that financially it's not a good time to do it. I imagine, and I'm very much sure that when we sort of pull out of this cost of living crisis, we'll see another spike. So anything that puts pressure on relationships, like, well, anytime you spend quality time with your partner when there are cracks in the foundations, that can be cause problems. Like, you know, Christmas time that's why we have divorce day as the first working Monday of the year in January, because people try and get through Christmas, but obviously when you're spending a lot of quality time, when there's no other distractions like work or the school run, you're kind of together the whole time. So again, that can cause problems, but financial issues cause a lot of problems. Lack of communication also then creates tensions that build and build. And then it could be something relatively small that actually causes the split. And then obviously people just grow apart, and quite often when the kids
Sure.
go move out of home, that empty nest sort of syndrome is quite difficult for a lot of people. So again, there's lots of reasons, but the good news is that divorce can be a great golden opportunity to redesign your life just the way you want it, and it doesn't have to be all bad.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's better to get out of a relationship that isn't making you happy than stay in one that's like, okay, or actually this is awful. But human beings, we don't like change, and we'd rather stay with what we've got and what we know, even if it makes us very unhappy, and because we know how bad it is, instead of changing for something that we don't know. But the good news is that
Yeah,
don't know could be so much better. But you've got to plan it, you've got to
it's
think it
such a
through, you've got to do the work.
misconception.
But yeah,
Yeah, that, even if something is bad, that it can be comfortable.
yeah,
Even if
yeah.
you're unhappy, that can still feel comfortable. It can feel known. And so people will stay in that same state just because they fear the unknown and what the other side may look like. This may sound like a crazy question, but I have to ask because my mind is going there. Do you only work with women? Are the tables ever turned?
No, I work with a lot of men actually. In fact, at the moment, my
Okay.
private clinic is 80% male clients right now. I think
Mm.
a lot of men like coaching rather than therapy, because there's still, especially over here in the UK, there's a little bit of stigma around therapy, whereas coaching, they have a
Hmm.
coach in the gym and a coach at work. So it actually kind of feels a bit different. And it is different, to be honest. We are very results focused, solutions driven. And we are giving like a step-by-step action plan at the end of every session, so it's very action focused, and results. That's what we're looking for, those fast transformational results from each
Mm.
session. It's not like sign up and hopefully in a month you'll find something's working. It's like, let's go from the get-go. You're going to have light bulb moments. We're going to create some momentum. We're going to tip the balance from the past to focusing you on the future, and we're going to move you forward. So I mean, it works great for anyone. But yeah, we're open to helping anyone. It's the tools that I created and we work with are very much designed to help any human being on the planet.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. It's good to know. In my mind, I'm seeing like, well, there's this before you kind of get divorced, and then there's in the middle of the divorce, and then there's that post separation as well. So, do you take clients and help them through all those phases, or they usually come to you and need help in one area more than the other?
Oh, interestingly, we get clients all the way through. So some people will
Mm.
say, and I've got clients that are booked in for January who are married, and their partners don't actually know, that they don't think they can stay with them. So I mean, they may well know, but they're sort of saying, "Can I book in a session? Because we've tried, it's not really working. January, I'm out." So a lot of the time before, or I think my partner's having an affair. I think he's going to leave me or she's going to leave me. Then we have the during, which is very common. But I have a client at the moment who's 11 years divorced. So she's way
Mm.
out of the other side, because the divorce took her about 18 months, I think. So it's a long time since she hasn't lived with her ex-husband. He's got children who are
Hmm.
8 and 9 years old from a new
Wow.
relationship, and not that new. And she's still living in the same marital flat that he left, and it's just, she's stuck. But a lot of clients will be
Mm.
stuck because you can't move towards something you cannot see. It's impossible. So most people come out of the divorce process and they spend all their time talking to their legal team or their friends about it. Then it's done, and it's kind of like, am I supposed to be happy right now because it's done and the lawyer's not calling me every day? I kind of feel like I lost a friend. And then now what am I doing here? Because they haven't done any forward planning, and the future
Mm.
I see usually with clients looks like one of two things: either a blank canvas or a black hole. And what we as coaches do is throw as much color on that blank canvas, or shine as much light into that black hole for them, so that it illuminates the future. Even if it's not exactly where they might end up, let's get that going so we can tip the balance from focusing on the here and now or the past to creating something they can take steps to move towards. And that's how we shift the momentum. And we do that from the get go. I train all my coaches in my training school how to, what I call tandem coach. So we're dealing with the maybe heartbreak or the children issues that they're dealing with in that moment, but they're also designing some of their future to get their sparkle back and tip that balance, so they don't get to that end point where it's just grey and they're stuck. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do actually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I'm sure there's a lot of people when you go through this, and especially if you've been married for a long time, who thinks like, I don't even know what life looks like without this. So really creating that vision, kind of coaching 101 there.
Yeah.
Speaking of coaching, I mentioned earlier in the podcast when we started that you have really kind of created a massive space in this industry. So I'm just curious, like, was there so many people that came to you? There was such an abundance of people who needed support. You were just in this process of we need more and more and more coaches because you've trained, I think, over like 600 people now as coaches. Is that right?
Yeah, way over that now, across 28 different countries, which is
Yeah.
amazing, and everyone is so lovely because like you mentioned, you have to be warm and friendly to do this job, otherwise it's not going to work. So
Sure.
yeah, we
Sure.
have an amazing community. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things was this is a service that didn't really exist in the way that I do. So I've been in self-help for 3 decades. It's quite scary.
Mm-hmm.
30 years. So for me, I'm pulling in all different types of tools and techniques, which is very much self-empowerment. That's my background. So neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy, like all the self-help, like Anthony Robbins. I mean, I trained with him when I was in my early 20s. So I'm kind of, my style of coaching is quite different to what is out there. If you're just going to do your average sort of coach training or something like that, we're very different. We provide self-empowerment tools, as well as a level of energy, a level of passion. Most of my coaches have either been through a breakup and want to turn that pain into their superpower, and you cannot underestimate the drive that a person like me, for example, has to alchemize that into something that's going to help people. But then also we have people, in therapy that want to add a more maybe dynamic style of coaching to where they can make more suggestions and kind of be
Mm-hmm.
more practical. A lot of people want that if they've worked in the industry. We're training HR directors. We're actually going into companies now. I was training the British government last week, and we've created an accreditation for companies and organisations where they can become breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse awareness accredited by having companions, breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse companions in the workplace, because we know now that, and actually it was Harvard Business Journal that came up with the initial research, I think, that shone a light on the huge reduction in productivity that happens when you're going through a divorce for any
Sure.
employee. It reduces productivity by up to 40%. And
Oh, I
that's for
bet.
3 years, the year before the breakup, the year during, and the year after. And guess what? It also impacts by reducing the productivity of their co-workers and their line managers by up to 4.5%. So it's not just them, it's everyone. And it's not just
Mm-hmm.
productivity, it's absenteeism, it's lack of focus, making mistakes, it's being snappy, emotional in the workplace. There's so many things that are a ripple effect. So now we're going into companies, our coaches are going into companies and supporting employees. We have a
Wow.
platform that they can access all our help and our coaches as part of their employee benefit packages now. So it's incredible how the awareness, I think, which is what I've sort of been probably quite key in driving awareness about the impact of this. And then the fact that people are coming forward going, yes, I didn't know there was help, but if there's help, I'll have it, please, because I'm really struggling. And that's not just about well-being anymore, it's about business bottom lines as well. So I think that's where they
Sure.
sort of come together.
I love, love, love that you are incorporating what you do into companies and for employees, because when you think about it, it's like what people really need when they're going through this is to have some normalcy in their life. The things that are steady, the things that are part of their foundation, to be able to do them, effectively and feel good about it. Because I think it just snowballs, right? If you go to work and then you're so distracted and unfocused and then you're not performing there, we're just adding, more pain to the situation and frustration and lack of confidence. So genius on company owners, for one, to increase that
Yeah.
productivity, but just what a great tool in the world, like real use tool that you guys are giving people so that they can cope in that situation
Yeah.
and thrive. So love, love, love that.
Oh, I mean, my coaches
Powerful.
love it because once they've trained with me, then they can come
Yeah.
onto my coaching hub, which is what the companies that come to me will use. So, we can also create them a revenue stream. So it kind of works because,
Yeah.
they're getting the training, which will actually personally, I think people underestimate how training as a breakup and divorce coach and also a domestic abuse specialist as well actually massively helps our own personal growth. If we're dealing with something, if you're a survivor or you've been through a tough breakup, use the tools on you first. When you've mastered them, you're a much more empowering coach because you've walked in those shoes and you can apply them. So there's personal growth, but then there's also, a side hustle you can set up or even a full-time career. So it really depends what you want to do with it. And for us women, Angie, I always think that coaching is a great career because the older you get, the more respect you get for what you do. And I always notice on the morning shows that, especially over here in Britain, the agony aunts or the sort of go-to advice, that they're much older women
Sure.
who get the questions and the phone-ins and those sort of things. And it's really interesting. It's actually definitely a good career for us to have as we get older, because there's no age limit for this one.
Right. Well, you've got the knowledge and the real life experience in addition to the education, if you go through that credentialing. So I love it. Well, you are doing amazing things out there, Sara. I love the work that you're doing, that there's a place for people to get help, and on so many levels. So if you're listening to this and you need it for your own personal situation, and I'm thinking that people who have already gone through this and going, I literally can think of people right now that are going, I wanted to help people go through this too, but I didn't really know how to put it together and how to actually do that for people. Such a great place to go to if you want to make a difference. So you've got a couple of books out there. You've got so many great interviews and just content out there. So point people to the right direction. Where's the best place they should go to start learning more about what you have to offer?
Oh, thank you, Angie. So you can always
Yeah.
go to my website, which is saradavison.com, or you can go and follow me on Instagram, Sara Davison Divorce Coach, if you want help and advice. There's practical tools there. But the website's great if you want to book a call with one of my team to find out how you could become a coach and how it works. We have lots of coaches in America and all over Canada and Australia and all over the world. So we'd love to have you join our community. So thank you, Angie.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sara. Thanks for being a light and being a place for people to go out there. If you all have enjoyed this podcast and you know somebody, since there are 56% of people get divorced, and you know somebody who needs to hear this, send the episode on to them and share the love. Thanks for joining, Sara.
Thank you so much.